Welcome back to Narrations. This is a story about quiet intelligence and quieter fear. About what it means to have a voice before the world believes you're allowed to use it. And about two people, separated by age, history, and regret, who recognize something familiar in each other long before they understand what to do with it. This is the story of Finding Forrester. Jamal Wallace moves through his neighborhood with the instinctive awareness of someone who has learned early how to stay alert. The Bronx has its own rhythm, basketballs thudding against cracked pavement, voices echoing through stairwells, the constant hum of life packed too tightly together. Jamal fits into this world easily. He knows how to belong here. What no one sees is what happens when the noise fades. Late at night, in the quiet of his bedroom, Jamal reads. Not casually. Not occasionally. He reads the way some people breathe, urgently, hungrily, with complete focus. Books stack up beside his bed, pages marked, sentences underlined in his mind. And when reading isn't enough, he writes. He writes in notebooks he never shows anyone. Writing feels dangerous. Private. Like something that could be taken away if exposed too soon. Jamal has learned that expectations are a trap. If people don't expect anything from you, you're free to become anything on your own. At school, Jamal keeps his head down. Teachers see potential in his athletic ability and stop looking after that. Basketball is the story they're comfortable telling about him. Jamal doesn't correct them. Letting people underestimate you can be its own form of protection. Across the street from Jamal's apartment building lives a man no one really talks to, only about. William Forrester. A name spoken in half-jokes and rumors. A once famous writer who published a single, legendary novel decades ago and then vanished completely. The kids in the neighborhood turn him into a myth. A ghost. A challenge. One afternoon, on a dare that feels reckless and thrilling, Jamal climbs into Forrester's apartment. The space is cluttered, dim, and heavy with the presence of someone who hasn't left in a very long time. It doesn't feel abandoned, it feels paused. When Jamal realizes he isn't alone, panic takes over. He flees through the window without thinking, heart racing, adrenaline burning through him. Only later does he realize what he left behind. His backpack. Inside it are his notebooks. His words. The part of himself he never lets anyone touch. Forrester finds the bag. And when he opens it, something shifts inside him. He reads Jamal's writing slowly, carefully. Not like a critic searching for flaws, but like someone recognizing a familiar voice. Talent he understands. Honesty he remembers. Possibility he thought he'd buried along with his own. When Jamal returns to retrieve the bag, the encounter is tense and awkward. Forrester is abrupt, guarded, suspicious of connection. Years of isolation have hardened him. The world, to him, is something that demands and then disappears. But he doesn't dismiss Jamal. Instead, he challenges him. Their relationship begins in fragments, brief conversations, sharp corrections, rules that feel arbitrary but precise. Forrester doesn't flatter Jamal. He pushes him. He insists on discipline. On rewriting. On patience. First you write with your heart, he tells him. Then you rewrite with your head. Jamal listens. Slowly, carefully, he begins to trust. At the same time, Jamal's life shifts in ways he didn't plan. His academic talent is finally noticed, and he's offered a scholarship to an elite private school. The opportunity is enormous, and isolating. Jamal steps into a world that was not built with him in mind. The hallways are quiet. The classrooms polished. His classmates confident in ways that come from entitlement, not struggle. Jamal feels every difference acutely. His clothes, his background, the way teachers watch him more closely than the others. Here, intelligence is expected, but only from certain people. Jamal excels anyway. Quietly. Relentlessly. Writing becomes both his refuge and his risk. Every success brings attention, and attention brings scrutiny. His English teacher, Professor Crawford, embodies that scrutiny. Where others see brilliance, Crawford sees threat. Jamal's talent disrupts the narrative he's comfortable with. When Jamal submits an essay of extraordinary depth, Crawford doesn't celebrate it. He questions it. The accusation of plagiarism arrives without warning. Cold. Calculated. Public enough to humiliate without outright destruction. Jamal is asked to explain himself, to justify his voice, to prove that what comes naturally to him wasn't stolen. The demand cuts deeper than anyone realizes. Writing was never meant to be defended. It was where Jamal told the truth. Caught between worlds, the neighborhood that doesn't know this version of him, and the institution that refuses to believe it, Jamal begins to feel the weight of isolation Forrester knows all too well. And Forrester watches this unfold from behind his walls. He continues to teach Jamal, to guide him, to refine his voice. But when Jamal asks him to step forward, to stand beside him publicly, fear tightens its grip. Forrester knows what exposure costs. He's paid that price before. And he's not sure he can survive it again. Jamal feels the pressure before anyone says it out loud. It sits in the pauses after he speaks in class. In the way Professor Crawford's eyes linger on him just a moment too long. In the subtle shift of attention whenever Jamal hands in an assignment that clearly stands above the rest. Excellence, he learns, is only welcomed when it arrives from the expected direction. The accusation changes everything. Plagiarism. The word is spoken calmly, professionally, as if it's a reasonable conclusion rather than a violent dismissal of who Jamal is. Crawford doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. Authority does the work for him. The implication is clear: talent like this does not come from a boy like Jamal unless it was taken. Jamal is asked to explain himself, to account for his voice. He sits in offices with adults who speak carefully, politely, as if the outcome has already been decided. They ask where he learned to write this way. Who helped him? Who gave him these words? Jamal answers honestly, but honesty feels fragile here, like something that can be bent until it breaks. For the first time, Jamal doubts himself. Not his ability, but his right to it. He begins to feel what Forrester has been living with for decades, the exhaustion of carrying something valuable that the world seems determined to strip away. Jamal keeps writing, but the joy thins. Each sentence feels like evidence now. Each idea feels like a risk. And still, he goes back to Forrester's apartment. Forrester notices the change immediately. Jamal's confidence wavers. His writing tightens, becomes defensive. Forrester pushes back, irritated at first, then concerned. He recognizes this tension. He has lived inside it. When Jamal finally tells him what's happening, the accusation, the threat of expulsion, the demand that he prove himself, Forrester's response is not comfort. It's fear. Not for Jamal. For himself. Jamal asks him to do one simple thing: tell the truth. Acknowledge publicly that he's been mentoring him, that the work is Jamal's, that talent can exist outside the narrow lanes people are comfortable with. Forrester can't do it. The walls he's built around himself aren't just physical. They are made of memory, of success that turned into pressure, of praise that became expectation, of exposure that hollowed him out. He retreated not because he lacked courage, but because the cost of being seen felt unbearable. Jamal leaves that day angry and hurt in a way he doesn't try to hide. For the first time, the roles reverse. The student sees the teacher clearly, brilliant, generous, and deeply afraid. And Jamal realizes something painful. Mentors can give you tools, but they can't always walk the path for you. At school, the situation escalates. Jamal is given one last chance to defend himself. The room is full. The stakes are clear. This is not about one assignment anymore, it's about belonging. About whether Jamal will be allowed to remain in a place that was never designed to include him. He stands and speaks. Not eloquently. Not perfectly. But truthfully. He talks about reading. About discipline. About loving language long before anyone paid attention. He refuses to perform gratitude for suspicion. He refuses to apologize for being gifted. His voice shakes, but it doesn't disappear. Still, it may not be enough. And that's when the door opens. Forrester enters the room slowly, visibly uncomfortable, every instinct screaming at him to turn back. He hasn't been outside like this in years. Every step feels exposed. Every eye feels dangerous. But he keeps walking. Forrester speaks calmly. He doesn't grandstand. He doesn't reclaim his legacy. He simply states the truth, that Jamal is a writer. That talent does not require permission. That mentorship is not theft, but continuity, one voice helping another find its shape. There is no applause. Just silence. And in that silence, something important shifts. The accusation loses its power. Afterward, Forrester retreats again, but not in the same way. The door to the world has been cracked open, and something essential has passed through it. He and Jamal meet one last time, not as teacher and student, but as equals. They part without promises. They don't need them. Jamal steps forward into a future that is no longer defined by doubt. He carries his voice with him now, not as something to defend, but as something that belongs. He understands that being seen will always come with risk, but invisibility costs more. Forrester returns to his apartment changed. The isolation that once felt protective now feels smaller, thinner. He sits down to write again, not for acclaim, not for legacy, but because the words are still there. Waiting. Finding Forrester is a story about recognition, the kind that happens quietly, between people who understand what it means to be underestimated or forgotten. It reminds us that talent needs courage as much as it needs guidance, and that sometimes, the most important thing a mentor can do is step aside long enough for someone else to be seen. If you enjoyed listening to this story, please like the video, share it with someone who loves movies like this, and subscribe for more narrations.